From the great American Central Plains and the rolling prairies of Kansas, I bid all of you warm greetings, wherever you are in space and time. Hello, my friends. Kevin Kelly here, host of Midnight on the Prairie. So happy to have you here tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in for what I assure you will be a most thought-provoking show. We'll be visiting in depth with Toby Evans on the topic of souls that become stuck here in our realm with the living and may not even know it. Toby is a founding member of the Labyrinth Society and the author of several books, including Dead But Not Gone, Are You Part of the Soul Bridge to Guide Them Home, as well as Soul Bridge to Original Light and Keeper of the Circles, Answering the Call to Wholeness. In 1995, she created what she named the Prairie Labyrinth in a field at her rural Missouri home, and the Labyrinth became the catalyst for her work in assisting these earthbound souls. Toby will be joining us here in the Midnight on the Prairie studio right after this.
Unique jewelry is what sets your outfit apart from others. It can make an everyday outfit shine, but too often the jewelry people wear isn't really noticed because it does not stand out. I want to tell you about a family-run online jewelry store called By Rock Studio that crafts unique, one-of-a-kind beaded jewelry that will be noticed and that you'll love to wear. It features everything from necklaces and earrings to bracelets and anklets. Rox's jewelry is so unique it caught the eye of Sports Illustrated, who went on to adorn its swimsuit models with Rox's work for the May 2023 swimsuit edition. So head on over to byrockstudio.com to find your own amazing jewelry pieces and shine. Again, that's byrockstudio.com. And thank you, Rox, for your support of Midnight on the Prairie.
Well, hi, Toby. Welcome to Midnight on the Prairie.
I'm thrilled to be here because I'm actually on the prairie.
Well, you know what? I was thinking about that. So to set the scene a little bit, we're visiting on a very chilly, dark evening. The sun has set. That quiet, contemplative time at the end of the day. And I was just thinking that you're right there out in rural Missouri and you have your Prairie Labyrinth nearby.
Yes, it's right in my backyard. And so I am in the prairie literally.
I love that.
Feels good to be here.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again. So in a bit, we'll go more into the kind of the ways in which the Labyrinth helps you in your soul work, Toby. But for now, for those of us that are not real familiar with what a labyrinth is, could you please kind of describe for us, what they are?
Sure. And this is a good thing for most people that don't understand it because we have all been inundated with that word and most people associate it with a maze. Okay, so they think, oh, it's the same thing. And thanks to Jack Nicholson having the maze in whatever that movie was, The Shining. But that was a maze, which is there are dead ends, there are wrong turns. So it's a path, but it is, you could say, a 3D puzzle that gives you definitely something to figure out. You've got to go in there and analyze and logicalize and eliminate wrong turns to be able to get to the center. Where a labyrinth is a continuous flowing path that is not a spiral and it isn't a straight line. It's very circuitous, which means it goes back and forth, but there's only one path, and it leads you into the center. So the description that I like the best is comparing those two, saying that a maze is meant to amuse and confuse you, where a labyrinth is meant to help you order the confusion in your life. And it brings you into your own center because you're in that mindless, I don't have anything to worry about or figure out. I can just walk aimlessly, but all I'm doing is following the path. So
Right.
you're definitely following a single path.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And I know that it
Yeah.
is very important in your work that we'll be talking about here in a bit, as far as your soul bridge work and that type of thing. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But
Sure.
I was thinking at the onset, it might be helpful to kind of explore the very nature of what we mean when we refer to a soul. It's a
Okay.
word and a concept that we're all familiar with. We've used it, we've talked about it in some way during our lives, but I don't know if many of us have pondered it in a really formal way. I know I hadn't.
Mhm.
But kind of in preparation for this conversation, I looked up the definition of soul in, of all things, the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, and I was pretty intrigued. There's a couple initial definitions there, and the first one says the immaterial essence, animating principle, or actuating cause of an individual life. And the
Mm.
second part, the spiritual principle embodied in human beings, all rational and spiritual beings, or the universe. And,
Yeah.
as I was thinking of that and of souls, I thought, well, in a way, I think a soul is a type of ghost, or a ghost is a type of soul, depending on how you want to look at it. So I
Hmm.
looked up the definition of ghost, and I was intrigued to see that soul is mentioned there. It says, basically, in part, that a ghost is the seat of life or intelligence. And then, secondly, a disembodied soul of a dead person believed to be an inhabitant of the unseen world or to appear to the living in bodily likeness. So,
Yeah.
gosh, I'd be really interested to get your take, your thoughts of what a soul is.
Yeah. Well, I think that they did a pretty good job giving those definitions, but I'm going to simplify it in because a lot of it's like words that go over people's heads.
Hmm.
You go, what? Okay, what is that?
Exactly. Yes, yes, yes.
you know, I'm reading a philosophy book,
Right, right.
and I've just always thought of the soul as this eternal or individuated God spark that we all
Mm.
have. We all have that spark from God, and it's very unique to each of us. And another way I think of the soul is you could say it's our recorder. It's a recorder that every single one of us has
Hmm.
that records everything. And that's why, I know we'll get into this more, but it's why you think of past lives, and then your current life. Well, the soul has that recording of
Hmm.
all your lifetimes and in between lifetimes, if you want to say that. And to make it more complicated, parallel lifetimes or lifetimes that have happened in other dimensions or densities or planets or galaxies. So
Wow.
the soul records everything. And that's why it's as unique as a snowflake, where you think, there are no two alike, so
Mm.
they tell us. And
Mhm.
I think that's the same thing with the soul. It's very unique. I could think of it as you could say your energy signature, that everybody has their own energy signature. And I would say I've read and I believe that if we are out of body or if we are in another dimension and someone or a being greets us, they are communicating with us or they are assessing us by that energy signature. In
Hmm.
other words, they can read everything that we're putting off because it's all recorded.
So it's really the
So
kind of the embodiment of everything having to do with us, but
absolutely.
us meaning from the past as well, all
Past,
encompassing
past and future.
and future.
Past and future.
Hmm.
Because we're the ones that are living with time because it's something that is for here
Yeah.
on Earth, but it doesn't necessarily exist in the same way when you're out of the body.
Right.
But that's why I'm saying that unique God spark is because if you think of all of us as being fractals of God,
Hmm.
that we're all sparks, that we're all sent to have our own unique experiences in the ways that we would say bad and good, and to send all of those experiences back to the source. So the source is getting all of those experiences. So when you talk about a ghost, and I think that makes sense to me to say it's a disembodied soul, but I also think of a ghost as almost being an echo or a fractal that is broken off from that part that we're talking about, the soul part, the essence of who you are when you're whole is, I also use the term higher self, that many people have heard that or use that expression, but the higher self contains, you could say, the oversoul, or all of us. And when we're talking about a ghost, something has gone on in one of their incarnations, because now we're talking about Earth. We're saying they lived in a human experience, in an incarnation, and then they died. But something happened on their return back to that higher self. There was a disruption, or there was an interruption that happened. So think of the fragmented or the fractal idea of breaking off. So there is a fracturing from that expression that was having that experience, and all of it did not make it back.
Okay,
So it's
sure.
left echoing. It's like, okay, you can still hear it, which is why some people say, and even I think in your description, you were saying the inhabitant of the unseen world, or to appear to the living in the bodily likeness.
Right.
So it can take on, and it would take on, the likeness of who it was in that lifetime that it got interrupted in trying to make the journey back. So it's still holding that likeness, or it's still holding that echo, is still there.
Right.
So that gives, that would be my way to try to explain what a ghost is.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And so, Kevin, I also use the word, in my work, I'm using the word earthbound soul when I'm really talking about a ghost.
okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
just so you know that.
Kind of interchangeable. I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So, in your work then of assisting souls to pass to the next realm, or I guess what I'm hearing, to go back to the higher self, is really kind of what's
Yes.
happening. You
Yeah.
call that as taking on a soul assignment, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, I could say that. For me, it was a soul assignment, but I would say many of us have different souls assignments, and it wouldn't all look the way mine does.
Okay, I see. Sure.
So
There could be different
yeah,
types of assignments.
yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So in your case, then, I believe you first took on, your soul assignment work kind of accidentally, from reading your book, Dead But Not Gone is where I'm getting this from. When you came across some traffic accidents at one time, and it
Hmm.
spontaneously unfolded, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, yeah,
Could you
that
tell
was
us about that?
really, absolutely.
Okay.
Um, I would say this was one of my very first experiences of um, being introduced to this, you could say,
Right.
in a personal way that was happening to me.
Right.
So I was with a friend. We were going across Kansas on our way to Denver, and it was dusk. And all of a sudden, the traffic, you could see there was a problem up ahead. Everything was stopping. Everything was coming to a halt. And finally, after moving at a crawl for so long, you started to see all of the debris of the aftermath of an accident.
Yeah,
So
we've all
it
come
was
across that. It's always awful.
horrible, horrible. And this one especially seemed really bad because there was almost like a median that was in the middle, and fiberglass that you could tell was from a sheared RV was strewn all over that median and all across the highway. It was horrible. So when we finally could see, you're coming now to ambulances and the police cars and all of those lights strobing, we could tell there was 4 cars involved. It was just, sickening. You couldn't really see anybody except the ambulance lights going. I mean, you weren't seeing people of what happened. You were just seeing people talking and that kind of thing. And I, at the time, was not driving. My friend was driving, and I just said, I am getting in the back seat. Like, I have to close my eyes. I don't even want to see this.
Yeah.
And I was doing it primarily to shut it out.
Yeah.
So I laid down, and it didn't take very long that I had my eyes closed and was immediately aware of 3 individuals that were in front of me. And 2 of them were males, 1 of them was a female. I felt almost like something was taking control of me, meaning a higher guidance that was calming me, that I was not upset or acting shocked. I was more or less calming them. And I knew immediately that they were part of the accident, of what happened. And I started telepathically talking to them. And so I felt that the first thing was to help them calm down. So I just said, it's okay, you've been in an accident, because confusion obviously would be a part of what would happen for any of us being in an accident, whether you're conscious or unconscious.
For sure.
But they were very shaken up. And I just said, you've been in an accident. I don't know if you're dead or not. I don't know that. But I do know that all of you are here in front of me, which means you're out of your body. And I said, you do have a choice. You do not have to stay here in this shock. If you are not dead, you can go with the ambulance, go with your body, travel with it, be outside of it, oversee, watch everything. And when you feel like it's safe to re-enter the body, when it's time and you can go beyond that pain, then you will know the right moment and you'll be helped going back into the body. And after I said just that much, one of the men just like blipped out. He was gone. So that leaves the man and the woman. So I continued to talk, and I just said, if you are dead, then that means that that silver cord, and why I was saying that, Kevin, is because I had read a lot of things about the silver cord when you're traveling out of the body.
Right.
And you can always tell you're still alive because your silver cord is still there. So that popped into my head to address that. And I just said to him, if your silver cord is severed, then you aren't going to go back into that body. But you still have a choice. You don't have to stay here. You can immediately go to where your family is, your loved ones is, anyone that you want to speak with or be with right now. All you have to do is think about them, and instantly you're going to be there. And I just said, comfort them, let them know you're okay, do whatever you need to do to be with them. And when you're ready, you'll be able to move into that connection of the light with your own higher self.
It's amazing how composed you sound, and how would you explain that it just all seemed to make such sense and you were able to give such good advice at that point? Where did that come from?
I'll put it into context to say this accident happened somewhere, I would say the year was about 1994. Okay. And by that time, so just to put this into a bigger perspective, I had been doing automatic writing, which is a form of channeling my own higher self, since 1982. Okay. So I had been doing this for a long time, where I can suspend my own monkey mind that wants to interrupt and allow things to come through me. And normally I would always be doing that in a written form, which makes it easier to bypass because you can just sit there and write.
Yeah.
This felt a little different because I was saying it to them, but I'm saying that why I was able to be composed is because it wasn't entirely me.
I see.
It was flowing through me.
That's what I wondered.
And I purposely did that. When I laid down in the back seat, it was like, whatever needs to happen here. I didn't expect this to happen.
Right.
But it is what happened.
You were opening yourself up to whatever it was going to be.
So that, whatever, and I had no idea what I was saying, which even got more, you could say, complex. After the man left, woman is left in front of me. And she is more upset and hysterical because I wasn't seeing a lot of emotion coming from the other two. It was more shock, which was what I was registering, shock and confusion from all three of them.
So the first one left immediately.
The more I'm talking, immediate. I think he went back because as soon as I said, follow the ambulance, and when it's time to go back in the body, go back in.
Okay.
He was like, got it, I'm gone. And the remaining man left as soon as I told him, go, you can be with your family immediately. Just think about them and you're going to be there. So he was gone. I didn't have to tell him twice. You don't have to stick around this zoo. It was horrible. But the woman it was like she was the first one I was able to hear anything back, because the men weren't saying anything to me. They were not giving me a sense of they understood or didn't understand. I knew they understood because they disappeared. But for her, she felt so rattled, and she heard me say all of that to the second man, which means I have already said to her, if you want to be with your loved ones, go. I've already said that, and she is now getting very worked up. And she's more or less giving me the impression, like, this can't be happening to me. No, I can't be dead, even though I think at that point it was registering she was dead. And then she's trying to explain it to me, saying, I just moved to be with my father, with my 8-year-old son. My mother died 6 months ago. We came to help him and to be with him. I cannot leave my 8-year-old son and do this to my father. No. I have to go. I have to go and stay with them.
Right.
And when she said that and was ready to bolt, I mean, that was the energy. Okay, I'm out of here. I've at least told you what I'm going to do, and I can't do anything else. That's the way it felt. And again, this wave came through me for me to be able to address her. And I just said, wait a minute. I said, your soul knew that this was going to happen today. Your soul knew that before this accident happened. So that means your soul knew in advance that you were not going to be here for your son. And you were so wise, you acted on that and moved your son to be with your father, thinking that you were doing that to help your father. But I said, don't underestimate your son. His soul is very wise. He picked you as his mother, knowing he would not have you any longer than 8 years. And though after that 8 years, he was put into good hands, meaning with his grandfather, that he would be that saving grace for him, and the son would be it for the grandfather, that it would give him purpose to raise the son. And the son will have this incredible role model of her father. And I said, you've got to trust this. Go and be with them, but trust your soul knows what it's doing. And that it needs to have you reconnect with your own higher self in order for them to benefit the most in what is going to unfold. And when she left me, at least it felt more peaceful. Like there was an inner peace about it that was not there prior to that. So at that point, when all three of them were gone, I sat up in the back seat and told this all to my friend. But at the same time, there's a surrealness to it that I said to her, do you think I'm making all of this up? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I just laid down in the back seat and had this big fantasy. But I couldn't shake it because it was like, as much as I kept telling myself I made all that up, it felt too real. And
Wow.
it felt too guided beyond my own wisdom. So let's put it that
Right.
way.
Right. So yeah, like I was saying, you didn't really set out to begin this process of interacting with souls in that way,
No,
particularly
no.
ones that are kind of lost and frantic
Yeah,
and maybe need
yeah,
some help
yeah,
to go to that next step, that soul assignment kind of help that you did. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So
That's really what it
so
was.
then in most cases when people pass, I imagine that they do move on without any help from somebody else. Is that a fair statement?
I actually read a statistic. I don't know how accurate this is,
Hmm.
but they said that in if we're using percentages, they're saying about 10% of the people that die don't cross over. Okay.
Mm.
And in other words, the majority do. And I believe that to be, I thought, well, okay, why I even gave it any credence at all is because the person that made that statement was like a shaman and somebody that would know more things. But at the same time, I have to interject myself. That might have been true up to a certain point, and I think that that number is much higher.
You do.
Okay. Yes, I think it's much higher. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And part of I think that there's been time periods where even the shaman that said this, um, I don't think he was looking back at history. I think he was looking at, okay, right now, and I think he made that statement sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he was thinking, yeah, most people don't have a problem. They die, they cross over, they move on to that in between part. And I would say that why I'm saying that time period might have been the case, but earlier periods of history or tumultuous periods of history where massive numbers of people die, I think that there was a whole lot bigger number than 10% that
Mm.
weren't crossing over.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
it could vary depending upon circumstances.
Of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So, okay. Do all souls stick around for a certain period of time, do you think? You hear about people who maybe leave their body in the hospital room, look down at their body, that kind of thing. Maybe they would want to see their loved ones before they leave. I wonder if there's a typical period of time that we would think that everybody, when they pass away, their soul's going to linger a little bit before it leaves.
I actually do believe that. And I'm basing that on all cultures around the world have kind of that standard, or they used to. It's not as common now, but they used to have that, oh, we have a wake and then a funeral within 3 days. Do you
Mm,
remember that
that,
time period, Kevin?
right.
They don't do it as much anymore. But going to different cultures rather than in the United States, they would have there was always rituals or things that go with it. And I believe it's common, and it doesn't mean you're earthbound. I think
Right.
it's natural for souls to say, I want to be there for the celebration, or I want to be there for the wake or the funeral or whatever it is.
Mhm.
They want to be there for that. And I think that you could say, a window or a door that's open that takes that into account, that when you're out of the body and yet you have not moved all the way across, You're in that in between. It's almost like that sacred protected space that exists at least for 3 days. That's my, us putting a time frame on it. But I think that is pretty standard.
It kind
Yeah,
of it kind
I
of makes
just think it's
sense
allowed.
if you think about just as we are right now. Isn't that what you would think you would want to do? Whether it's a
Absolutely.
tragic accident or something else, you
Yes.
wouldn't want to just
Yes.
instantly snap your fingers and be somewhere else. You would want to be
No.
around to see the
Yeah.
people that you care about, maybe try to connect with them and give them some type of
Yeah.
support, give them some messages.
Yeah.
I've certainly
Yeah.
talked to a lot of people who have seen or felt or heard their loved one in their presence
Yes.
soon after they've died.
Absolutely. And for many that can't handle it in the conscious realm, a lot of people will have a dream where the loved one is assuring them that they're okay.
Right.
That's very common also. But I totally think that the majority of people, when they die, they don't just go blip all the way across. They want to have some kind of closure, and they want to check in with the loved one to make sure, okay, are you okay?
Mm,
They're doing all of that.
you're right. Can't imagine
Yeah.
doing it any other way. I mean,
No,
if
me
I think
neither.
the same then as I do now, you would have to have that.
Yes.
Maybe it's a form of closure.
Yes.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. It's
So,
human nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think at the heart of your work with the souls that remain among us beyond that period, right? In other words, these are the ones that are
Hmm.
kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe stuck, is what I would say. What would the kind of reasons be that certain souls stick around to the point that they don't leave on their own? What situations or conditions would lead to them remaining near us instead of transitioning?
So think first of all of all the varied ways that people die. Okay, that's a lot right there. So many of those, you could say, who die suddenly. They're here 1 minute, they're gone the next minute. So an accident would be in that category, and a car accident, a fall, a heart attack, murder, a drug or alcohol overdose, going in for routine surgery and not expecting it to go haywire. But all of those would be, I didn't expect to die. And now I'm can't get back in my body. So there's one of the reasons that happens is, you could say, the person doesn't know they're dead. So it's along the same lines that I did with the car accident. Part of, I think, my soul assignment is explaining things to the soul in ways that they can understand it. So it's like breaking it down for them, because they just aren't getting it. The word stuck is good. So the first one that I said is they don't even know they're dead.
Right.
Okay, but I would say the majority do know they're dead. And why they are staying earthbound is, I'll simplify it and say it's under two big umbrellas. One is the umbrella of fear, and the other is the umbrella of love.
So their
And
fear of death, what would happen if I
right,
let go and let this next step happen?
yes,
And as I think about that,
yes,
it could be for a lot of reasons. Is there anything next? Is we one fear,
yes,
but also maybe you're
yes.
worried about being judged for your life itself, right?
That's huge. That one's huge. Especially, I'd say, in our Western culture, most of us have grown up with a heaven hell concept. And no matter how good you think you were, now that you're out of the body and you're going, well, I wasn't that good.
Mm,
What about this one time? So you're having
mm,
your own doubts inside of you, and are fearing, and are kind of placating that by saying, well, this isn't bad. I still am aware of my loved ones. I can stay here. I don't have to change anything. I'm going to
right.
stay right here. But it also could be, even if they're not afraid of the judgment or heaven hell kind of concept, it could just be that it's unknown.
Mm,
This is known to me. I want to
mm,
stay to what I know. Where you hear a lot about people like in a haunted house and say, they go through the same routine every day. They go up, they sit in their chair, they do whatever. It's that same stuff.
Yeah, routine.
In the routine. This is what I know. I'm happy here. So the love umbrella of why people stay is a twofold part. It could be the part of the soul itself that just died is feeling like, oh my God, I cannot leave my family.
Yes.
I can't leave and I think of like mothers who die in childbirth, and if the baby lives, and they are sitting there going, there's no way I am leaving this child.
Yeah.
I'm staying with it, making sure it's taken care of. They would be so committed to that. So it's total from love. It is not trying to harm the child at all. They aren't thinking in those terms. And neither is any loved one who dies who feels like I can't let go. So I'm thinking of early on, I had a client that actually it was three grown adult sisters who came to walk the labyrinth, and they were all cheerful and we're going to make a thing of it. And two of them go in to walk and one stayed to talk with me. And the one who stayed to talk with me, I would guess she was probably in her late 40s, early 50s. And she all of a sudden starts crying and saying, I just can't get on with my life. My other sisters have coped fine with mom's death. I cannot cope with it. I felt like I so depended on her, and she just was a mess. And I'm saying to her, it's fine. We all grieve differently. It takes some people longer than others, especially if you had a closer relationship with your mother. And I said, when did she die? And I was expecting her to say 6 months ago, a year ago. And instead she says 10 years ago. And that was my clue. That's when I went, oh boy, her mother never crossed over.
That's what I'm thinking too.
So,
She's still attached, and she's feeling that in the symptom of this guilt or sadness or whatever because that mother's attached to her, right?
Yes. And so when a soul doesn't cross over, and again, I have to point out, they don't know this, meaning the soul itself does not know this. And that's why it takes a human interventionist, which I am, to point it out to the soul. That I had to say, what's your mother's name? And do you realize that all of your grief in missing the family and you can't let go, and that you are so full of sadness in this, that all of that is going into this daughter.
Wow.
And you are completely taking over her life.
Right.
She cannot go on.
Yeah, she can't move on.
Because you haven't moved on. And that is one of the signs, is the unresolved emotion, you could say, especially it shows up as emotion. But whatever was that unresolved emotion. So in Anne's case, it was guilt. It was, I didn't get what I wanted. It was all of the manipulation, all of the stuff between the sisters, all of that stuff was still running and rearing its head through her. Through this, it was still going on. And when I said to the mother, I said, do you realize that you are draining your daughter's battery? So I'm using that as a metaphor. I'm saying it when you're alive, we all have our own battery. It's plugged straight into source, and we have a rechargeable battery that goes all the time. But when you're dead, you don't have a battery anymore. So the way you're able to stay here is you attach to somebody else and you're draining their battery.
Oh boy, and don't even realize it.
So, and that's why I have to point it out to the soul, because they're aghast. They go, I never meant to hurt them. Oh, no. I didn't want to cause any pain. I said, you are causing a problem. She can't get on with her life. Everything is being, you could say, micromanaged. So the daughter, let's say, is thinking, well, I'd really like to have a relationship with somebody. And the mother's going, he's not good enough for you. No way.
Oh, boy.
So that transfers to her, even though she's thinking it's her own thoughts. All of that unresolved stuff, it's going on. So when they get it, meaning this mother, when I said, are you ready to cross over and join with your own higher self and explain the whole thing? You'll have your life review. You'll understand why you got to go. And the most important thing, especially when it's motivated by love, that they don't cross over. The biggest thing they have to be convinced about is crossing over does not mean you will never have contact with your family again. That is not what it means at all. Because when you cross over, you can connect with them anytime you want. But the way they're going to receive it is totally as an upliftment of joy, of unconditional love, of a blessing, rather than the sadness, the grief, the recounting the bad times. You know, it's a whole different adjustment.
Right.
That mom won't want to micromanage her life when she's seeing it from her own higher self perspective. She will know that the daughter has to make her own decisions and do it her way, and she will give her her blessing.
I see. So once she decides
Yeah,
to go on to that next realm, then
yeah,
it all makes sense. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, I was doing the wrong thing.
right.
So when you
She'll have
when you talk
full
to the mom, what
understanding.
happened then? Did she immediately do
Well,
that?
yes, when I said, we can help you, you know, we can do it today. We're going to help you cross over. You don't have to stay here. And of course, the crossing over process happens by them walking the labyrinth,
Okay.
because it is set up with the chakras. So it is a 7-circuit labyrinth, is the type of labyrinth that I have, which means there's 7 paths that align beautifully to the 7 chakras. And when you have an earthbound soul that is enmeshed in whatever unresolved thing that was going on for them, whether it's guilt or I didn't get to finish something or I'm scared, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's usually trapped, you could say, in their energy body. So that means in the chakras. And by us walking the labyrinth is set up that every one of those 7 turns correlates starting with the root chakra. You're going all the way up through their energy body. So when this daughter went out to walk, her intention was, as I come to each one of those chakras, I'm going to intend whatever blockages is in my mother's root chakra, I'm going to help her dissolve that. I'm going to help her release it. She doesn't have to hold on to that anymore. So it was moving that she went in and walked it with that intent to help her mother clear any of the baggage that was still in those. And I can say this as a general statement that's very true, that if you have an earthbound soul, usually more than one chakra is pretty blocked or pretty much where the gunk is mostly situated. It could have to do with like how they died. Let's say they died with a heart attack. So that means they very well could have a lot at the heart chakra that could be there. But all of the earthbound souls have blockages at the root chakra. It's that very first chakra, because they're connected and they can't let go of their identity of who they were in that lifetime. No, I'm still the mother. No, no, I'm still attached to this. So they're attached to the body. They're attached to the identification of what their role was. They're attached to everything in the physical,
Right.
which is the root chakra. So as they go up and clear it, you could say the root chakra is clearing the physical layers, but then as they start going up to that second chakra, They're clearing the emotional body. When they get to the third chakra, they're clearing the mental body. They're going all the way up. So by the time they get to the crown chakra, that really is a key part, because you could say the crown chakra connects us to our own higher self-awareness. And for earthbound souls, you might as well say a lead plate has been put there. So, and part of what an expression that always made sense to me, when you say, well, why do people stay earthbound? And I would say a little jingle would be that intensity creates density. So if the soul, whatever was going on for them, it was intense. It was an intense emotion. And usually an intense emotion means a lower emotion. Okay. Anger, fear, terror, guilt, resentment, apathy. Think of people that commit suicide. They're in that depths of despair. They're in a very intense situation emotionally that creates those attachment cables, no different than taking a hot air balloon and roping it off and tethering it to the ground. You're not going anywhere. So that density creates that holding point, and it shuts the connection to the higher self completely off, because the higher self is at such a higher vibration, calling that aspect home.
Right.
So when you get to that last path in the labyrinth, the seventh turn, the crown chakra, the intent is release whatever blockage is there, separating that soul from the awareness of their own higher self. So by the time they walk into the center, there is a recognition or an awareness of the higher self that you could say has been calling them home ever since they got out of the body. Mm-hmm. Because in my belief, I think that every one of us, when we die, I think our higher self is right there. But that awareness, whether you would say, oh, that's Jesus, or oh, that's Buddha,
I see,
or oh, that's my grandmother.
Yeah.
I'd say it's your higher self. It's that all-loving energy calling you home.
And being presented to you in a way that is something that would resonate with you, like you
Familiar.
just said. Whether it's Jesus or whether it's your mom, it's something that is a trusted higher self. Yes. I mean, that's kind of just,
yeah. And because we all have free will, so that's one of the tenets of Earth, of being in an Earth incarnation. It's a free will planet, which means you are in charge of your own death process. So that means if your higher self is there saying, come, guiding you home, and you're going, no, my daughter needs me. Mm-hmm. I can't leave. They're going to forget about me. Or I got murdered. No, I'm not going anywhere until they find my killer.
There you go.
I'm the only one who, I mean, think of the different ways.
Or, you know who killed you, and you want to somehow try to help.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know. I've got to get them into that place.
Unfinished business is another category, perhaps.
You bet it's a big category, a big one. So it creates that glue that keeps them stuck when they've got unfinished business. And because that, again, that unfinished business is usually a lower vibration. Okay, it's usually something that is not, that high vibration of the higher self saying they'll figure it out, let them alone. They're saying, no, I have to finish this, or no, I'm not going anywhere. And the other part that we don't like to think of in that equation of the love part is many times the soul is ready to go, but the family is grieving so bad that the soul goes, all right, I'll stay for a little bit. Okay, I'll stay. Yeah. And I do tell that story in my book, because it was really, I feel like he was a very advanced soul. this man that died. He was Cherokee, and his wife could not let go of him and was very angry with him that he had a heart attack. That's how he died. So it was quick. And I think he didn't have the baggage. In other words, from the standpoint, he was ready to go. And what pulled him back or made him go, nah, let's put a pause on that, is his wife was such a mess. She had never done anything without him, never written a check in her life, never made any decisions. They were supposed to retire and get an RV and travel, and she was mad, very bitter. Like, you just ruined my life.
Right.
You know, so I'm sure he felt guilt. He felt, okay. And he was used to taking care of her whole life. So he, of course, put a pause on his own, thinking, oh, I'll get back to this. I need to stay with her. And as he said to me, I'm going to teach her the ropes, or I'll make sure she can handle things. And then I'm going to leave when she's better, when she's adjusted more to me leaving. And the friends that brought her to come to walk the labyrinth, knowing she was a mess and couldn't let go. And I think he had already been dead for about a year before they came. And she was no more ready to let him go then than she was the day he died.
It all just halted right there. Yeah.
It was totally halted, and she was very leery of me, because whatever the friends had said to her, we're going to go to the labyrinth and maybe that'll help you let go of him. Well, that put up red flags to her. So she got out of the car kind of very defensive, saying to me, you are not going to take him from me. No. You know, and I said, I'm not doing anything. This is not my call. So just walk the labyrinth and see if you get any messages, if you feel anything. To me, it was like a hands off. Okay, she is not ready for this. I cannot intercede in this. There's got to be an agreement here that happened with the soul. And I wasn't conversing with the soul at that point. But when she came out of the labyrinth, I said, she seemed calmer. So I thought, well, that's good. She's not as upset. And I said, how was it? And she said, well, okay, I guess. Okay. And I said, you know, do you feel better? And she said, well, this weird thing happened. This butterfly landed on my finger, and she pulled her index finger up and she said, and it's still here.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she was in the center of the labyrinth when that happened. And she walked the entire labyrinth back out, which takes about 20 minutes. And she still has the butterfly on her finger. And I'm kind of laughing to myself, saying, boy, the universe is pretty clever how they give us, you know, really in our face symbols. I said, oh, are you ready to let the butterfly go now? She said, no. I'm going to keep it with me.
Wow.
You know, as long as it's going to stay with me, no. And I just kind of shook my head and went, whoa, okay. I have never talked to somebody so dug in. And again, I'm not hearing anything from the soul. And she's before she got in the car, because now she's calmed down, knowing I'm not going to take him from her. But she said, do you mind if I walk out into your garden area and make a little medicine wheel with polished rocks that belong to my husband? He would like that. I said, go ahead. I didn't pay any attention to what she was doing, where she was doing, so I didn't know where it was. She gets in the car with her butterfly and leaves. And I just kind of shook my head and thought, okay, whatever, you know, I can't interfere with this. But it was probably a month later, I was in the garden area weeding and flipped up all of her little polished stones that I didn't see them, and they all went scattering. And as soon as it went up in the air, I knew what it was. And I kind of inside my head telepathically, but I said, oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Yeah.
That was your medicine wheel. Okay, I'm going to put it back together. And I'm just thinking that. And all of a sudden, the voice of Bob turns on in my head. And Bob was laughing and said to me, you don't have to put it back together again. And I was a little bit surprised to hear Bob. I was like, oh my God, Bob is here. And so I just said, does this mean that she really is ready to let you go? And he again is laughing, saying, hell no. Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, then what are you doing here? And he said, it finally dawned on me that as long as I keep staying, she is never going to change. She is never going to make the change she needs to make because I'm still here.
So by trying to help her, he wasn't helping her.
He
Yeah.
wasn't helping
Yeah.
her. And he had to experience it. And he said, not only am I not helping her, I just figured, fine, I know what I have to do. I have to go. I have to go across. And he said, and I realized I didn't know how to do that anymore.
Because so much time had passed?
So much time had passed. And I'm going to go back to our conversation about how long does that window stay open?
Right.
Okay. That window, meaning the presence of the higher self, was so if we think of, I'm just throwing this out arbitrarily, saying the higher self is 6th or 7th density. Here we are down at 3rd density. When we die, it's as if it comes down and meets us. So it lowers down. It's on the same plane of awareness for our consciousness to grasp, to go with it. And now when it says, no, I can't do that, it's not that you're being abandoned. It naturally is going to go back to that high level of where it always is.
Right,
it's
where
going
it
to go
resides.
up to a higher level.
Yeah.
And the earthbound soul that stays at a lower level might feel like, well, what happened? They left me. They're gone. Or they might not be aware at all because they're so plugged into 3rd density. But he was plugged in. He said, I can't get to it myself. I need your help. And I said, okay, because by this time I'd been helping enough earthbound souls that I knew the key to this was the higher self. I knew that bringing that, so think of that lowering again. There's something about walking the labyrinth that's rising, this whole raising, I could say it's raising up the density of that earthbound soul. It's helping lighten its load, and at the same time it's bringing the higher self-awareness back into alignment again.
It's bringing them together, kind of, in a way.
It's bringing it together. And that's what happens by the time you're in the center. It's on the same plane of awareness. So when I didn't understand that, so I said to him, then you seem to understand this better than I do. So I said, okay, the higher self is critical here. So if that is critical, why doesn't the higher self just come in and get the soul? I said, I feel like I'm stuck in the middle. Like we're playing the role of the middleman or the middle woman. Why don't you just take out that middleman and stick these two together? And he said, because we need you who are in a 3rd density body, because you are much closer to the earthbound soul than the higher self is. Because they aren't getting through the signals.
Yeah, a facilitator.
But you are you're the facilitator, or it's why I started using the word. He said, you're the bridge.
The bridge.
There's a gap here of distance between that high vibration of the higher self and you could say the low self that chose to stay. It needs a bridge, a transducer to step down step down the levels, to bring it into connection again. It's bringing it back into that awareness. So he said it's very necessary that the human part is aware, because you can talk to the soul. So as soon as he explained it and I understood it, I mean, he's the one who really, I just said, okay, I'd be happy to help you, but before you go, you've got to answer all my questions. Because this was right in the very beginning for me,
Right.
of helping souls, and I didn't know what I was doing.
It
I
makes
was making it
sense.
up as I
You've
go.
got a great person that can
So
communicate
he's
these
the
things.
one, yeah, because he was so like head and shoulders above the other earthbound spirits that I had been coming into contact with.
Wow.
Most of them are scared or ignorant, or like the mother, no, I want to control my daughters and have to be important in their lives.
Yeah.
He was at a different level.
Yeah,
You know, we could
laughing
say
about it
he was
even. Yeah.
he was laughing about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy, I really did myself in this time.
Mm.
But he said, I'd be happy to answer anything you want to ask. And he's the one who outlined for me, why don't souls cross over? He's the
Wow.
one who explained that,
Okay.
who said there's all kinds of reasons. Usually it's under one of these bigger categories.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can get plugged into, I don't know, I'm dead, I have unfinished business, I can't leave my loved ones. In his case, the loved one can't let go of me.
Right.
So all of those create this quicksand that keeps the soul stuck.
Hmm.
So when I got all my questions answered, I just said, come on, we're going to go walk the labyrinth, and I will help you clear all of whatever is in the chakras. For him, it was minimal. It was raising the energy up, lowering it, bringing him into the center where his own higher self is right there. And I would say it's pretty consistent with all souls that I release, especially if I'm doing it with a client. I would say to the client, open yourself to anything they want to say before they go. And it's always the same. I mean, pretty much, they are profusely thanking you for helping them get across. So
Really?
professing the love they have for the soul, whoever is there, if it's a loved one. But in his case, it was just saying thank you so much for providing this. And I felt like I was the one that was in total gratitude. It was like, well, if this is the soul mission that I have, then I better know what I'm doing. And he had to laugh at that too. And he said, you're never going to know what you're doing. It changes every time, and he's right.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in the moment and like fly by the seat of your pants. That's how it goes.
Yes, that makes sense. I mean, in the end, it's probably going to be a case-by-case situation.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends, we're going to take a quick break now, and in the next episode of this podcast, we'll continue this conversation with Toby. And I'll be starting things off with a question that's been rattling around in my head as we've talked, maybe in yours as well. And that is, is there anything that we can do now while we're still alive to help us realize it one day that we've died and we're outside of our body? Yeah. In other words, are there things we can do now to avoid becoming the type of unwitting earthbound soul that she's been describing, right? So please join Toby and me in part 2 for that question and Toby's response, as well as a talk of the great change that is underway. Now, this involves a rising consciousness that is related to a process Art Bell referred to as the quickening. Yeah. All of that and much, much more in part 2.